An airport has been part of Toronto's waterfront since construction was completed back in 1939. While the prominence of the Toronto Island Airport was eclipsed by Pearson Airport as a hub in the late 50s, it has slowly been creeping its way back up into the skies. Today's Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport is the third busiest airport in the province and the hub of Porter Airlines. Now, Porter has announced extensive expansion plans, and that doesn't set well with our next guest. Anshul Kapoor is the chair of No Jets TO, and he's here to talk about his concerns. Hello.
Thank you,
we had Robert DeLuce, the CEO of Porter Airlines, on the program on Monday, and we received a ton of email and tweets from people asking us to provide a counterpoint to his case. That's what we're going to do tonight. I want to start by you telling us what No Jets TO is all about. Who are you?
We are a citizens coalition, and what we stand for is the revitalization of our waterfront and protection of that revitalization. We stand against the expansion of the island airport. We definitely don't stand against the current iteration of the island airport. We accept it with all its flaws and all its impacts currently. And our position is simple. Address the impacts that are there currently before you start talking about expansion.
Okay, we're going to get through some of the concerns specifically that you have about expansion, but I want to just get a sense of how much support. You say you're a broad grouping of people. How much public support do you have?
Oh, we have immense support, and it's growing day by day. We have support from people like Margaret Atwood through to Toronto and York Labour Council. So all of the unions within things support our cause as well. And Greenpeace supports our cause. So we have support across from Toronto and across the region.
It's interesting that you say that because a recent poll done by the City of Toronto shows that the city's residents are about divided almost in half, 47% supporting an expansion of the airport that will allow jets and 45% opposed.
Absolutely, and if you look at that poll and you compare it to the other polls that have been in the media as well, such as the poll done by Porter Airlines or the poll done by Toronto Port Authority, you see that that poll is the closest when it comes down to the sentiment about this contentious issue. However, when you look at the polls and the questions that they ask in the city polls, they don't address things like Union Pearson Express. They don't mention it. They don't mention the impact on Waterfront Toronto and the taxpayer dollars that have been put into revitalization of the Waterfront Toronto. One of the main things that we would like to focus on is the fact that $195 million of our money has been put in to revitalize Queens Quay Boulevard. And it's not to turn it into a 4-lane highway to provide access to an airport. It's to turn it into a 2-lane street and the extension of Martin Goodman Trail.
Okay, as I mentioned, part of the reason we're doing this tonight is that we had Robert DeLuce on the program earlier this week. We put it to our viewers to vote on our story of the week. They said they wanted to talk about the counterpoint. I want to play a clip from our program. This is DeLuce responding to criticism about the new CS-100, the plane that Porter wants to fly out of the airport. This is him responding to criticism that this new plane won't be as quiet as the turboprop planes that Porter now flies.
I think most of those concerns were put to rest when the CS-100 Whisper Jet flew for the first time on September the 16th. And I happened to be there, and it was incredible. I mean, the aircraft was described by many as being silent, and it was the next best thing to being silent that you've ever heard of a jet aircraft.
All right, Anshul Kapoor, are these planes which DeLuce calls whisper jets as quiet as he claims?
I think the term itself is an oxymoron. It's ridiculous that we're even questioning and we're talking about noise from a plane that hasn't even flown or hasn't been certified as of yet. It took its first flight on September 16th, but when it flew, it had no people in it, had no luggage in it. And those are the things that impact noise.
Okay, wait a minute. People in a plane make a plane noisier?
Absolutely.
We shut the doors on planes.
So does the area that they fly into. So it flew out of Mirabel. If you look at Mirabel, it's surrounded by farmland. What that means is there's nothing to reflect the sound off of. And everyone that attended that launch, that first flight, was pro-jets and pro-CS-100. We have absolutely no. Well, I didn't get an invite.
But you don't know everyone who was on the plane.
But here's the thing. We're definitely not against CS-100. We think it's a great technology, and it's definitely a benefit that technology is coming from a Canadian company. That plane belongs at Pearson. The people in Etobicoke and Brampton and Mississauga who deal with these flights going over their head, they would love to have that so-called whisper jets fly over their head,
Okay.
not at our waterfront.
Some of the people on that flight were journalists. They are not.
Actually, there was no one on the flight.
There was no journalists on the flight.
There was no one on the flight but the test pilot.
Okay, I stand corrected. All right, I want to keep moving on because there are a number of issues I want to talk about. I want to bring up a photo. This one, Porter Airlines itself has put out. This compares the current Q400 plane it uses with the new CS100 it wants to use. Okay, so take a look at this. This is Porter put out this image. Anshul, what's your problem with the image? What's your concerns?
Many.
All right, give me a few.
Well, I'm a marketer, and from a marketing perspective, this is a sales pitch. And when you do a sales pitch, you do everything intentionally. So what you do is you make the Q400 more bold, and you make the CS100 a little bit lighter, so it looks less impactful. And you take a view of the plane where it might look as it's substantially or a little bit closer to what the Q400 is. The fact of the matter is that this plane is twice as heavier as the Q400, but they don't talk about that. What they want to focus on is noise, but it's not a noise issue. Noise is a very small part of it. It's a issue, but it's not the issue. What about the impact of growing an airport from 2 million visitors as it is right now? If you've gone down to Porter, if you've flown Porter, you've seen how bad the traffic is. And that one street that goes down, adding yet another 2 million passengers there by 2016. Where are these people going to go?
Okay, I want to stick with the pictures because you have an issue with that picture we just had on screen. I want to bring up another photo. This one comes from a member of the National Yacht Club who sent these photos to the City of Toronto earlier this month. The Q400 on the left, the blue and white one, and the CS100 on the right. Why, in your view, is this a more accurate picture?
At the end of the day, this is a jet. Plain and simple. This is a jet. This is much bigger than the airplane that currently flies into the airport. If you just look at the jet intake of it, it's 76 centimeters. It's huge. So that means that the plane itself is huge. So if you're just focusing on the noise issue, and Mr. Duluth loves to do that, so does the Toronto Port Authority, because they want to focus on just one issue and turn it into a one-issue campaign. This is going to change our waterfront and our city forever, irreversibly.
Okay, if we put these jets on the waterfront, what do we stand to lose?
We stand to lose our revitalization. For years, we have ignored our waterfront. We have an economic engine on our doorstep, on our front yard, and we've ignored it. And finally, we're putting public as well as private funds into revitalizing it. I already mentioned the $195 million going into Queen's Quay. Well, it was $1.4 billion in Waterfront Toronto's investment to date. And that has already, to date, created 40,000 jobs. Why are we not focusing on that and focusing on the economic impact of one private company? Toronto is the only city in the world that is even entertaining this conversation. It's ridiculous that we are discussing this today. I would rather be at home with my daughter.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this. You've been to the Toronto Island Airport.
Of course.
Flown Porter?
Absolutely.
Do you like the service it provides?
It provides a service to Toronto, and we accept it for
good
what
service?
it is. Sure.
Well, what is it that you accept that it is?
It's a regional boutique niche airport, and it should remain as such. Even as it is in its current iteration, the impact of the current airport and the growth of the current airport hasn't been studied. The impact of traffic, health, air pollution hasn't been studied. The impact on water pollution hasn't been studied. What are the de-icing fluids? How are they being captured? Are they being just thrown into Lake Ontario? That hasn't been studied. Without any of these studies, we're rushing the project through City Council to say we need an answer now. Mr. Duluth wanted an answer by July. And he said that if I don't get it by July, my agreement is in danger, is in jeopardy.
Okay, but the city is not beholden to Mr. Duluth, and he's trying to run a business, and he says, listen, I'm pushing my business model forward. I'm going to pressure the people that need to approve this to give me a response on my time frame. The city doesn't have to do that.
They don't have to do that, but for some odd reason, they're doing that. They want the decision done. A simple example is the health impact study was just initiated 2 weeks ago. A health impact study on a general basis takes about a year and a half to do. They're trying to do it in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, they're doing absolutely no incremental studies. They're going to look at past data to see what would the modeling be to see if there's going to be an impact. Modeling is not the same as a scientific study.
Let me ask you this. If you're saying the argument is, let's wait till some of these studies are done, see what the results are, make decisions from there. At the same time, you're saying, we know that there are health impacts. from these planes that they're going to put forth. How do you square that?
Well, from our perspective, it's simple. Even the most recent study from World Health Organization clearly stated that air pollution is directly correlated to cancer. And studies from the British Medical Journal just about 2 weeks ago also stated that noise pollution from an airport are directly correlated to cardiac diseases and disorders. So there's studies out there that say this is a bad idea. There's a reason why no other city in the world is entertaining this idea, because they know this is a bad idea. Having an airport on your main waterfront, we are the only city in the world that has that.
All right, the WHO, and it's talking about air pollution, blames cars as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make that point.
For sure,
It's not saying
it's not just an airport. So the point was more along the lines of air pollution. If you look to the studies that have been done in Toronto, so there's a South Riverdale air study done, which concluded that Toronto's airshed, which is the maximum amount of pollution that can go into our air, is already maximized. Why add jets to it? It doesn't make sense.
People want to go to places.
Oh, there's Pearson for that. And in 2015, it becomes that much easier for you to get to Pearson.
By the rail link.
By the rail link, 25 minutes, door to door.
Now, I should point out there are people opposed to the rail link as well, using trains out to Pearson.
As I understand it, they're opposed to the use of diesel engines and not the electrification, but electrification is in the plans, and we support that.
Okay. I want to play another clip of Robert Deluce. This is him explaining how an expansion would affect Lake Ontario. Take a look.
What we need in order to use the CS-100 Whisper jet to its full potential, meaning being able to run it right out to Vancouver or down to LA or into the Caribbean, would be up to 200-meter extension at each end of the main east-west runway.
How would that affect what's going on now in Lake Ontario?
Well, not at all. No material movement of those buoys. Same sort of enjoyment of the waterfront and of the inner harbor and the outer lake as is presently enjoyed by Torontonians.
Not more dangerous for boaters?
Absolutely not.
All right, Anshul Kapoor, you sent us that picture of the expansion zone. How would the expansion of the island airport affect livability on the waterfront?
The fact of the matter is that Mr. Deluce doesn't make that decision. He's not in the position to make that decision, neither is his paid studies that he shared with the city. It's Transport Canada that makes that decision, and only after the plane has been certified. The plane is not being certified until most probably end or the third quarter of next year. So they don't know what the requirements of this runway will be. And they can't, and the positioning of the marine exclusion zones are communicated through Transport Canada. The image that we shared is through Transport Action Ontario, which is an independent transport activist group, and they comment on everything from rails to air. And this is the image that you're looking at right now. And this is based on current regulations and current understanding of what the airplane is and how the airplane is going to come in to the airport. The logic is simple. If you have this much space and you extend this guy up to here, and there's regulations to say there has to be a certain amount of space between this guy and the marine exclusion zone, then this obviously has to move out. It's as simple as that. But I'm not the one to confirm that either. Transport Canada is.
And Transport Canada it might order the expansion, 50-meter expansion of each end of the island airport runway, it says, with or without Porter Airlines proposal going through?
That's a great question, and I love the fact that you asked that, because Transport Canada's regulation has not been put forth as of yet. That was a Transport Safety Board recommendation made after the Air France crash at Pearson in 2005, and that has been sitting with Transport Canada for the past 6 years already. So when this regulation is going to come by, no one knows. And to add to that, is that regulation is going to be about increasing the runway safety areas, which is the races. But the regulation is not going to come by and say you have to expand it into the water. The tripartite agreement unequivocally says, Section 14 of the tripartite agreement says that you cannot expand this runway into the water. So even if the regulations come in, they cannot expand into the water without reopening the tripartite agreement. And that is why we think that this entire conversation is ludicrous, because Mr. Deluce is a private company and he wants to grow. Perfect, absolutely. We're in Canada. We allow companies to grow and we respect that growth. Grow in the appropriate place. Go to Pearson.
All right, this is, some people are going to say this is a group representative of a certain segment of the population. that speaking of NIMBYism, you know, we're against the business in our neighborhood, but take it to Pearson, that's where it should be. Is this just about NIMBY? Not in my backyard, go somewhere else?
Absolutely not. I think it's the complete opposite. The first question that you asked me is, do you have support across the city? And we said, yes, we do. This is not about NIMBYism because Porter Plains, as they stand right now, affect homes on Scarborough Bluffs, the beaches, and Mimico. And we have support from all three of those regions, as well as Etobicoke. We have support from upwards of Bloor and Runnymede, where one of our supporters actually spoke up at the city town hall and made it clear that Porter Planes fly over his house as they stand right now. And those are turboprops. When the jets go, then the decibel levels are exponentially increased over his house. Who's going to study that? The city staff is not studying that right now.
All right, we've talked about the livability and the health aspects. I want to focus a little bit, just briefly, on the environmental damage that you claim will be caused by expanding the island airport. Give me some examples. What are we talking about?
Well, I think one of the things that you mentioned was the WHO study also includes cars. So the key thing to focus on is just by 2016, they're proposing to expand or increase the visits to this airport to 4 million people. It's around 2 million right now. So that's 2 million extra people. 76% of those people come by cars. So you're increasing traffic as well to this airport. So what that means is you're increasing traffic air pollution. And to add to that, jets use more fuel than the Q400s. No one can argue that. They're bigger planes. They burn more fuel. With they burn more fuel, they add to the air pollution of Toronto. We have the Gardner. We have more traffic. We have jets coming down the pipeline. Why do this to our city? We're the fourth largest city in North America now. We deserve a waterfront that ties to that.
All right, earlier this week, Toronto Port Authority Chairman Mark McQueen spoke at the Toronto Regional Board of Trade. And it was a lengthy speech, talked about many aspects of it. But he said that the TPA would only support expansion if the current noise regulations weren't exceeded and if there's no negative environmental impact. What do you think of that?
I was at that speech, and Mark's a good guy. I love to hear him speak. He did spend almost an hour of that speech, but about 20% or 30% of that time was taken to attack the opposition of this island airport expansion. The Toronto Port Authority has not come clean and said that they support the expansion. They haven't.
What do you mean about come clean?
Well, come clean as in they haven't taken a stand.
And they said they will. That is.
And they won't. But what they're doing is they're putting millions of dollars into an ad campaign that is in market right now, that was launched just after the Porter plans, that is promoting Billy Bishop Airport. If you look to their own polls, 82% or upwards of 80% of people in Toronto love Billy Bishop Airport. No one's questioning the airport. Then why is there a campaign in market to promote it just the same time that the Billy Bishop expansion plans are there from Porter Plans? They're in line with each other. They have to be. 66 or 70% of the revenue that comes to Toronto Port Authority comes from this airport. Essentially, they're an airport authority more so than a port authority.
All right, we have about 2 minutes left. I want to put a couple more questions to you. Many Ontarians clearly enjoy and appreciate Porter's service. For those people who are sitting at home saying, why don't I get to see the service expanded? Why do you get to win this fight and not them? I want to fly Porter to more places. Why can't I?
Well, I think it's more so than that. It's about a definition of a city. Is it about how you leave the city or how you live in the city? There's 17 million people that visit our waterfront. They're not from the people from the condos that are around there. Everyone comes down to the waterfront. I have people come in to visit my city, or my guests come in. I take them down to the waterfront. We have been blessed with a jewel, and No Jets TO is working hard to fight for that jewel. So what I would say to those visitors is go to our site, read our content, sign our petition, let your councillors know that the waterfront matters and the City of Toronto and the vision of Toronto matters.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about the waterfront and being shared by everyone, because a lot of the criticism we heard this week was that it will ruin Toronto's waterfront. If Porter's expansion plans go through, Toronto's waterfront will be ruined. It makes me wonder, what is your vision for the waterfront?
I share it with Waterfront Toronto. It is a mixed-use, living, breathing, working, playing environment. The Queensquay revitalization is a prime example of that. The Portland's expansion and the Portland's development is a prime example of that. We need to understand that we have an economic engine on our front yard, and we need to reap the benefits of it.
All right, the waterfront, runs from Mississauga in the west, Scarborough in the east. It's a big parcel of real estate. Is there not room within that to have both visions, to see a Porter vision and the vision that you say you want to see, or that others?
There's a reason why no city in this world is having this discussion. There's a reason why people or cities in the world are closing down their downtown airports. What we're saying is this airport works as is. If you need to expand, Pearson is there. Please expand there.
Anshul Kapoor, thank you for coming in. I know this is not the last we will hear from you or from this group as this debate continues on. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.